Joseph, I've come across liquidated damages clauses in contracts. Can you explain their importance?
Absolutely, Linda. Liquidated damages clauses are key tools in contracts. They define a pre-agreed amount one party must pay the other if there's a breach, usually tied to delay or non-performance. This helps avoid disputes over actual losses and brings predictability to commercial relationships.
How do you determine an appropriate amount?
The amount must reflect a genuine pre-estimate of likely loss, not a punishment. To get this right, you look at the contract's scope, the risks involved, and the financial impact if things go wrong. If the amount seems arbitrary or excessive, courts might reject it as a penalty.
What happens if it's seen as a penalty?
Then it's unenforceable. The injured party would have to prove actual damages in court, which is often slow, costly, and difficult to calculate. A poorly drafted clause reintroduces the very uncertainty it's meant to prevent.
Can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say TechX contracts with Codemasters to build a custom app. The contract states that Codemasters must pay $50,000 if the project is delivered late. TechX justifies it based on lost revenue, reputational damage, and added staff costs. But if the actual harm turns out to be only $5,000, and the $50,000 seems excessive, a court may strike it down. In contrast, a clause that links the amount to realistic, measurable loss is far more likely to be upheld. For example, in construction contracts, it's common to see a figure like $5,000 per day of delay, which reflects idle equipment or extended labor costs.
How do these clauses vary across industries?
Quite a bit. In construction, liquidated damages cover delays, missed milestones, or loss of access. In technology, they might address delays in delivery or failure to meet service-level agreements. For instance, if a cloud provider fails to meet 99.9% uptime, the contract might specify a financial penalty per hour of downtime. The point is to match the clause to the actual cost of disruption in that industry.
What's a typical clause example?
Here's a strong version with enforceable language. If the contractor fails to complete the work by the agreed completion date, the contractor shall pay the client liquidated damages at a rate of $2,500 per calendar day of delay. The parties acknowledge that this amount represents a fair and reasonable estimate of the actual losses incurred due to delay, including but not limited to additional project costs and lost revenue. This payment shall serve as compensation for the delay and shall not be construed as a penalty. This clause makes it clear the amount is based on compensation, not punishment.
What happens if there's a disagreement over the amount?
That's where dispute resolution clauses come in. Many contracts specify mediation or arbitration before litigation. Mediation helps both sides reach a mutual solution with a neutral third party. Arbitration delivers a binding decision, but it's still faster and more private than court. Defining that path in advance avoids confusion later.
Could using a clause like this hurt the working relationship?
It can, especially if one party feels blindsided or the amount feels unfair. That's why these clauses should be discussed transparently during contract negotiations. If both parties agree on the rationale behind the number, it reduces tension, even if the clause is triggered.
Are these clauses enforced the same way everywhere?
Not quite. In the US, for example, courts ask, was the amount a reasonable forecast of loss at the time of contract formation? If yes, the clause is usually enforceable. If not, it might be struck down. In some civil law countries, even a fair clause might be unenforceable if it's deemed overly one-sided. So it's critical to align the clause with the laws in the jurisdiction where the contract applies.
Thanks, Joseph. That really clarified things.
You're welcome, Linda. Liquidated damages clauses, when drafted thoughtfully, turn risk into structure. They reduce legal ambiguity, protect timelines, and keep projects moving, without sacrificing trust.